To the people of India and to Indian Americans all across the United States, I want to wish you a happy Indian Independence Day. On August 15, 1947, men and women all over India rejoiced in the declaration of the independence of the country of India. Today, on August 15, 2020, I stand before you as the first candidate for Vice President of the United States of South Asian descent. When my mother, Shamala, stepped off the plane in California at 19 years old, she didn't have much in the way of belongings. But she carried with her lessons from back home, including ones she'd learned from her parents, my grandmother, Rajam, and her father, my grandfather, P.V. Gopalan. They taught her that when you see injustice in the world, you have an obligation to do something about it, which is what inspired my mother to march and shout on the streets of Oakland at the height of the Civil Rights Movement, a movement whose leaders, including Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., were themselves inspired by the nonviolent activism of Mahatma Gandhi. And it was during those protests that my mother met my father. And the rest, as they say, is history. Growing up, my mother would take my sister, Maya, and me back to what was then called Madras, because she wanted us to understand where she had come from and where we had ancestry. And of course, she always wanted to instill in us a love of good idli. In Madras, I would go on long walks with my grandfather, who at that point was retired. And we'd take morning walks where I'd hold his hand and he would tell me about the heroes who were responsible for the birth of the world's biggest democracy.